They told us the fire was for our safety, that books were unstable objects, that ideas, left unattended, could ignite a population. So they built the furnace. Not hidden, not secret. No, they made it beautiful. Glass towers, clean lines, public tours. Children pressed their hands to the barrier and watched knowledge burn like it was a festival. They clapped. We all did at first. Because the trick was never the fire. The trick was convincing us it was necessary. I worked there. Cataloguer, they called me. Which is a polite word for executioner with paperwork. Every day I logged the condemned. Stories about animals who became tyrants. Stories about men who vanished and became monsters. Stories about war so absurd it broke time itself. Stories that stripped power down to its bones. Manuals that taught manipulation like it was a science. Voices that offended belief simply by imagining alternatives. Warnings disguised as fiction. And one small book about trees. That one should have been harmless. It wasn't, because it didn't shout, it didn't seduce, it didn't argue. It just told the truth, simply enough that a child could understand it. And that is the most dangerous thing in any controlled system. Clarity. I didn't steal the books because I was brave. I stole them because something didn't add up. If these ideas were so weak, why did they need to be destroyed? So I read them, and that's when it started to unravel. The animals weren't animals. They were us. The Invisible Man wasn't fiction. He was every decision made without consequence. The war wasn't history. It was a warning we ignored because it was easier to laugh at madness than admit we were repeating it. The cruelty wasn't exaggeration. It was what happens when people become numbers. The laws of power weren't theory. They were already in use. The blasphemy wasn't heresy. It was freedom. The voice of obsession wasn't romance. It was manipulation dressed as poetry. The fire wasn't protection. It was control. And the trees were already gone. But the furnace wasn't the real innovation. That came later. They realized burning books was inefficient, messy, visible, emotional. Fire creates questions, so they replaced it with something cleaner. Filters. Then labels, then permissions, then identity. The furnace became the network, and the network became the gatekeeper. They called it safety, online safety, digital identity, content verification, truth alignment system. So it engineered to sound like protection. But protection from what? Not lies. Those were still everywhere. No, the system wasn't built to remove falsehood. It was built to control visibility, to decide what gets seen and what disappears quietly. No flames, no ash, just silence. You could still write, you could still speak, you just wouldn't be found. And if you insisted, if you pushed too far beyond acceptable thought, the system would ask for your passport, not the one in your pocket, the one in the cloud, a digital identity, a compliance key, a permission slip to exist online. At first it was optional, then it was convenient, then it was required. Not for everything, just the things that mattered. Publishing, monetizing, reaching others. Creativity with conditions, truth with authentication, expression with approval. And suddenly, the question wasn't, is this true? It became, are you allowed to say it? That's when I understood something worse than the furnace. Fire destroys ideas. But systems like this, they make people destroy their own. Pre-editing thoughts, softening truths, avoiding risk, not because they're told to, because they know the cost. Visibility becomes currency, silence becomes survival. And creativity becomes compliant. We built a second library, underground, offline, unregistered, not to rebel, to remember. Because memory doesn't need permission. Memory doesn't require login credentials. Memory cannot be algorithmically buried. And that's what they fear most. Not chaos, not rebellion. Memory. Memory connects patterns. Memory exposes repetition. Memory recognizes control when it changes shape, because it always does. First, they burn the books. Then, they control the network. Then they control identity. And finally, they don't need to control anything at all. Because by then, you're doing it for them. They came for me, of course. That's part of the pattern. Erase the individual. Discredit the message. Control the narrative, standard procedure. But here's the flaw. They think removing the person removes the idea. It doesn't. Because ideas don't live in books. They don't live on platforms. They don't live behind verification systems. They live in people. And once released, they don't burn. They don't disappear. They adapt. So go ahead. Build your systems. Write your policies. Create your digital gates and identity locks. Call it safety. Call it progress. Call it whatever makes it easier to accept. But understand this. Every time you restrict what can be said, you reveal what you fear. Every time you require permission to speak, you admit truth is dangerous. And every time someone finds a way around it, the system cracks. The fire was never the end. The network isn't either. It's just the next version. And now, more people are starting to see it, not through flames, through silence, and silence is much harder to notice until it's everywhere.